to the phone lines and talk to Cam Inman, Bay Area News Group, also 95.7 The Game's NFL and 49er Insider. Cam. Is there any? No, I don't want to put it because I know how you're going to try to answer this. I'll just say it. What happens tomorrow at 1:00 with Jimmy Garoppolo?
Oh, I think he's. Matt, you're killing me. I mean, it's just. Yes, he should not be on the roster at 1 p.m. when they get it down to 53 men. Will that be the case? It doesn't have to be the case. It's just I just don't see any sense in prolonging it. Not that I think everybody knows he was a really good quarterback for them, and yes, he'd be a great option to have on the roster. It just there's been no sign that is something that would continue because there's no engagement on his end of like being out of practice or being in the meetings or in the playbook. So it's not like they're setting him up to be their backup quarterback. So what are they doing? I get it why they wanted to keep him on the roster. If a quarterback went down around the league during the preseason, well, the preseason ended yesterday. The only quarterback issues that really arose out of the preseason were Deshaun Watson getting that longer suspension and Zach Wilson of the Jets and getting hurt. And so each team went with contingency plans rather than go after Garoppolo. So does it come down to they just don't want to let him go to Seattle? Like, what's the latest they can hold on to him? Do they just grant him his release so he can pick his own team for the first time in his career? He's never been a free agent. Or does that mean he just wants to sit and wait a little bit? There's a lot of questions still. It's just not so cut and dry to say he's gone off the roster by 1 p.m. Tomorrow. I mean, I certainly think the odds are in the favor of that happening. It doesn't have to happen is the tricky part in all this.
Yeah, Cam, I'm with you. And I was telling Steiny, wherever Jimmy goes, I'm rooting for him. But, man, there's a scenario he's staring in the face that he may not be a starter for an NFL team in week 1. And I know the shoulder injury is a big part of that. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you about the starter, and it's Trey Lance. We know he's starting, but the guys that are going to protect him and open up the holes for these running backs, outside of Trent Williams, Cam, I don't know who's starting, who's not starting. Is Aaron Banks going to have a job week 1 as a starter for the San Francisco 49ers on their O-line?
Okay, that's a good question, but I like what you just said earlier about if Jimmy. Let me do one more thing on Jimmy. Because you said he wants to be a week 1 starter. I don't think that's a priority for him. I think Jimmy's priority is to find the right place for him because he's been in the league long enough. He doesn't have to prove that he's a week 1 starter anymore. For his career, he's got to find the right spot that's going to help him get that next kind of more of a long-term home, okay? So that's why I don't think it's such a rush for Jimmy to figure that out.
So I don't think Seattle's a good spot. Everybody says Seattle, but he would look worse there, Cam.
I agree. In fact, personally, to me, I think he should go maybe to the New York Giants or Miami Dolphins, where you're behind quarterbacks that aren't really entrenched, that have some question marks around them, but you're familiar with the coaches there. The NFL is really about connecting the dots, right? Even Houston as well. I just don't think that's a great team where Jimmy could see himself thriving there. So, all right, enough on Jimmy. Who's starting, you said?
Man.
Yes, I think Aaron Banks is starting at your left guard because you don't have any other option. Could Daniel Brunskill re-enter the picture in the lineup? That's possible, but he hasn't been practicing in 3 weeks because of a hamstring injury. That's kind of a lot to just all of a sudden, okay, welcome back, you're in the starting lineup. It's possible. It's the offensive line. They do that with guys. Trent Williams hasn't practiced the last couple of days because he's been ill. Mike McGlinchey returned to practice today at right tackle, so that's a positive sign today out of the 49ers practice that we're out there for. So that's a good thing. I mean, most of those starting lineup questions is about the offensive line, like you said, to protect Trey and get this offense grooving because it's going to be a little bit unpredictable, we should say, because you don't know how Trey Lance is going to be. You don't know how he's going to be used, whether they're going to do a lot of zone reads. I think it'll depend on the opponent. If they can find the mismatch of a defensive end that would bite on a zone read or not.
Cam Inman joining us on 95.7 The Game. All right, speaking of how somebody's going to be used, I'm looking at Deebo Samuel's stats from last year. And receptions, he had 77. and carries he had 59. Now the carries were kind of backloaded on the second half of the season. You know, you don't need to get specific here, but what do you anticipate his role being as the season progresses?
Yeah, I think it's still going to be more. He's obviously a dynamic weapon that you got to use whatever way you can. They had to use a lot of his rushing exploits last season because the running backs got hurt. You can still mix it in a little bit here and there. I just don't think you're going to see much. They've really tried the last month to work Deebo on these go routes with Trey Lance, but they're not working. You saw that against Houston. His bread and butter is just to get the ball in space and steamroll defenders. He doesn't have to do it way downfield. Just get it to him, and he can take it downfield himself. I see them doing that more, and that's important with Trey Lance putting the ball on target to give him running room after he catches the ball, so that he doesn't have to adjust too much to catch it. So, and then we just talked to Elijah Mitchell just now for the first time in about a month. He had a hamstring injury that kept him out a few weeks. He looks raring to go. He looks fully healthy, and he said his rushing style is not going to change, although then he said, I am going to make an effort not to run into everybody this year and more about making guys miss. And that's always a good thing. You don't want to get your running backs too banged up because he's had a history of too many injuries. But then the other thing he said was, and this carries over to Deebo and Trey Lance, is it's going to be so unpredictable what they're doing. And that is really the crux of any Kyle Shanahan offense, is to keep opponents guessing what they're going to be doing.
Wow. And I feel like we've seen that. Defense is confused. Let me ask you this. You mentioned running backs. What about Mitchell's running mate and Trey Sermon? Cam, could we see a scenario to where he doesn't make the team?
You can see that scenario because they have some really good options next to him. I think he makes the team because I don't see them giving up on him after just one season. And he was running behind a really bad offensive line that wasn't scheming in the preseason, so I try not to read too much into that. He ran okay in practices at camp. None of the running backs ran great in camp practices because there's no tackling to the ground, so there's no real breakaway runs either, so it's kind of hard to gauge. But, I mean, they've talked him up pretty well. I don't think it's such it's like they can do that with guys to try to maybe inflate their trade value. I just don't see them giving up on him after a year. And then it kind of comes down to, I think they like Jeff Wilson Jr. a lot as the backup. Very well-liked guy here. Ty Davis-Price, a rookie out of LSU. Hard runner. Very raw, though, I think, in assignments. So I think, they're not ready to fully commit to him as a big every down play guy. I mean, that's Mitchell's role anyhow. And then it's kind of JaMychal Hasty contributes on special teams. And then Jordan Mason was the undrafted rookie that you figured would thrive in the preseason. That's what the preseasons are made of. And I think he's somebody that you can get on the practice squad. I don't think somebody's going to poach him.
Cam Inman joining us on 95.7 The Game. Yeah, I think Trey Sermon's going to make it because I was reading those comments from John Lynch about a week ago.
Yeah.
And it sounded like he was saying he's played better in practice than he has in the games, and you guys don't see it. But nevertheless, I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. Going to ask you for a prediction. What player will lead the San Francisco 49ers in receiving yards this year?
Deebo.
Okay. All right.
I mean, it's been tempting.
Do you think it's cut and dry though?
No, because it was. But Brandon Ayuk did so well this offseason and through camp, where it's like he should have a great year too. So don't get me wrong. I don't think that was false. I think he is going to have a really productive season. But Matt, I think what you need to be asking more is, it's about the rushing yards. This team is still a run-oriented offense. And as sexy as the passing game is around the NFL, the 49ers are still a run-the-ball team first and play great defense. And they have a spectacular defense that looks very healthy aside from Jimmy Ward's hamstring injury. That'll keep him out the first month. So I think, yes, I still think Deebo, but I think Ayuk's going to be closer. As long as Deebo stays healthy too. He plays so violently and physically. He's got to get through that too. So there's a lot of factors.
Cam, let me lay this on you. I was telling Stoney, man, the Niners are getting love nationally. Anybody that's making a prediction, they're talking about how this roster is loaded. I get it. And it's just incredible that, one of the biggest question marks is the young quarterback. At minimum, what should this season culminate in for the Niners to follow up this change and the fact that last year they were 15 minutes away from going to the Super Bowl? What does Cam Inman say a successful season for the Niners would look like this year?
It's got to be double-digit wins and a playoff appearance at minimum, because Trey Lance is not inheriting a bad team at quarterback. He's not new to this system. He's going to be new to the NFL game, and there's going to be a lot of wild throws. There's going to be issues. There's going to be injuries with this team. But I think, initially I said 12-5. I think I might back it down to maybe 11-6, just because of the nature of how those things, aforementioned things, can happen. So I'd say, 11-6, get in the playoffs, and hopefully go on. I just think the NFC is wide open, guys. I think once you're in that playoff,
good point.
You can be a wild card team. You can be an NFC champion. I don't think anybody's going to run away with it. I think that the Niners match up well with the Rams. I think in the NFC South, that's where the other competition is going to be, either the Tampa Bay Bucks with Brady, of course, or maybe New Orleans is going to be on the rise, although I don't like Jameis. They got a new coach in Dennis Allen, so there's change there. And I think the NFC East is just a bunch of has-beens. It's an outdated division. I like that word. I'm going to use that again at some point. And then I think the Cardinals and the Rams are not going to challenge much. And the Niners, obviously, they've had Aaron Rodgers' number, and everybody still likes Green Bay. But I think Minnesota might take that division more than Green Bay, to be honest with you.
Interesting. Cam, it's going to be a fun year. Looking forward to it, man.
Okay, guys. Thanks for having me.